Obviously, the place to start with would be Liverpool's 2-2 draw with Arsenal at Anfield last weekend, where it was a brilliant first half from Liverpool because they went 2-0 ahead through Luis Diaz and Cody Gakpo. And I know that Arsenal could have scored that Bukayo Saka chance to make it 1-0, but they didn't. And I felt like it was just utter dominance. But then the second half came, and it felt very much like Liverpool were taking their foot off the gas. And they eventually get back into the game, score 2 goals. And would you say a 2-2 draw was a fair result in your eyes?
Yeah, I think you'd have to admit it was. I think it was your kind of classic game of two halves, wasn't it, really? Liverpool very good and dominant in the first half, and Arsenal very good and dominant in the second half. I think, I kind of watched back at some highlights actually this morning and just kind of saw how around some of the second half moves that Arsenal were putting together, there's a little bit of kind of jogging back in from Liverpool. It's the intensity's maybe not quite there. And I guess that makes it kind of hard to read too much into as well. They were electric in that first half. I think the atmosphere carried them and they wanted to kind of make a point against Arsenal that there is a gap between the sides. But that level of motivation just isn't there at the moment because they've got the league wrapped up. They don't need the points. They don't need to be putting themselves running themselves into the ground to get the results because it just doesn't matter at the moment. And so I think a combination of that attitude and also the fact that Arsenal were I think they've maybe got a bit of a telling off at half time, that combined to make the second half a completely different contest. But like I say, I think a 2-2 draw was fair in the end, and it's not one that you should probably read too much into, which is probably the case for all of these final four games for Liverpool.
Absolutely, and if you've seen the players and the manager on holiday recently, you can sort of tell that they're not necessarily taking these final few games maybe as seriously as they would have if the title was still on the line. But the title is won. And speaking of the title, Arsenal are obviously seen as Liverpool's closest challengers this season because they have finished second the previous 2 seasons, and with Man City dropping off, you'd think that maybe they should have posed a much better challenge to Liverpool than they did in the end. But a lot of people are already suggesting that Arsenal might be title favourites next season, especially because you consider Trent's leaving Liverpool, the fact that a deal's reportedly been agreed for Zubimendi, and it's difficult to know who Liverpool might sign. But do you see any risk of, say, Arsenal leapfrogging Liverpool if Liverpool stands still in the transfer market, or perhaps they just improve to an extent where they're able to put up that much better challenge that they should have done this season?
Yeah, I think with Arsenal, I think sometimes, and I think Liverpool supporters may be guilty of this at times on maybe social media of going maybe too far in the criticism this season. I think you can see from the Champions League run they went on. I think you can see from the second half at Anfield on Sunday. There's the makings of a very, very good team there. They're one of the best teams, I think, in Europe in terms of penning you in and pressing you. I think the defensive aspect of how they work there is very, very good and impressive, and it remains so. I think the big issue this year, and kind of, I don't think you have to be an avid Arsenal watcher to know this, is that the balance has just tipped slightly too far in favour of the defence, hasn't it? And they don't have quite enough creativity and goals. But like I say, all the fundamentals are there, and they've still got a very good squad. They've still got, some brilliant players all through the spine. Saka's absolutely world class, and if he has a full season where he doesn't miss too many games next season, that's a big boost for them. I think what they need to do is they need to add some more quality in attacking positions, but that's very difficult to do to get those signings and to get them right. But if they do get them right, and they've typically done some good business in recent years, which is why they've gone from where they were to where they are now, if they get a couple of signings right in the attacking positions and they instantly gel, I think they will be right back up there next season. I think, attempts to write them off or suggest they'll never get over the line, I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think they are just a little bit short of the attacking quality that maybe Liverpool have had this season. And if you get those couple of signings right, I think they'll be right up there. In terms of whether that's enough to leapfrog Liverpool, it will depend a lot on what Liverpool are doing. And my slight concern about them is that there's maybe a little bit of a transition season coming up. I think it was expected to be this year, but I think Liverpool didn't change too much, kept it ticking over, and that's been helpful to them. But we know that there's a busy summer coming up with a lot of change involved, and so that puts a bit of pressure on Liverpool. So, I'm almost of the mindset of kind of going into next season, you assume that Man City will be up there, Liverpool will be up there, and Arsenal will be up there. And in terms of picking who's going to be the ones who get over the line, you know, if Arsenal make the right signings, if City do the same, if Liverpool do as well, it's going to be hard to pick who's going to be the stronger. There's so many other factors that will be involved, including how those signings settle, how right they've been judged in terms of the needs of the team, how the balance of the team is affected by new signings, and also, you know, the other stuff like injuries and how the fixture list lands for you and things like that.